Hey everyone, and thanks for joining the webinar. We're going to talk about metadata and accurate metadata in Meridian and how we can accomplish this by leveraging from other systems. So let me figure out why I can't advance my slide. There we go. Today we're going to talk about what is metadata. We're going to do a quick review and why it's important. I think everyone knows that metadata is very important, but we're going to review it anyway. How to ensure the metadata quality and consistency by leveraging existing sources. So this is really where the trust and the efficiency comes in. And then some overall benefits of leveraging that data and making it that way. Excuse me. So again, what is metadata? Metadata by definition is convoluted, and they use the word data a lot when they describe it in the dictionary. But basically, it's who, when, where, what, and why. Usually those are the questions that get answered by the metadata. That's just the descriptive terms we use in Meridian to categorize and classify documents. Why is it important? For categorizing, organizing, and locating. So you have an O&M manual or a warranty or something you want to save from a project or an effort. And we use the metadata to categorize, organize, and locate it in Meridian. In your file structure system, say a shared drive or even on your hard drive, you have a little bit more, less configurable metadata here that gives you some basic information. So for example, it's on your computer, it's in this folder, it's in this directory, it's under this folder, it's under this folder, and then here's the name. So you have certain properties that you can find things easily with Windows, with basic searches, but we take metadata in Meridian, as most of you know, to a higher level. We make it so that it's standardized and more descriptive terms rather than a folder structure. This additional metadata that we utilize in Meridian. For example, we have location data. So where is this piece of equipment? It's in this building. Here's the name, here's the abbreviation, here's the floor, you know, all the things of location. We can also tag equipment or asset data. So equipment numbers, which can be a multiple property field if you have the same equipment number. Usually you don't, but you can have multiples to one operations and maintenance manual because you probably have 4 of these pieces of equipment maybe on the roof. So you can tag all 4 of those pieces of equipment to this data. And we can pull in other various pieces of data that you deem important when we configure your system. And was the result of a project or an effort, we can also tag that metadata. So accurately saying it was part of this project, there's a date associated with it, there's all of the information that is related to the project is also tied to this document. The importance of having this additional metadata is that different people are looking for this document in different ways. Some people are looking for it by the location. Some people know the project that it came from. Sometimes they just want to go by the equipment number. So having multiple fields of consistent metadata makes it easier for everyone to find it. What are these other systems of record? Briefly, you can do your locations management systems. So you have your sites and your campuses, your buildings and your floors, or your units or regions or zones if you're in a different part of the industry, not higher ed. We can make your locations come from that source of record. So when you maintain a space management system, we can use that same exact data from there. Same with a maintenance management system. That's usually where your assets and equipment records reside. The master number for a piece of equipment is there. Sometimes it's geolocated, so that can also come along for the ride, but usually not. And work orders. If you have documentation as a result of a work order, we can leverage that in Meridian so that you can actually find that info from the maintenance management system by doing a hyperlink query that you can run, that if you've used the proper tags in Meridian or metadata, it'll search and pull up the exact document you need on that equipment. Again, project management systems, we can leverage data from there. So your system of record for the project number, the description, the location, the PM, those pieces of data, we can leverage from somewhere else. All of these things coming from somewhere else and being leveraged by the system makes it more efficient. You don't have to manage two lists, and the accuracy is there because it's entered in the system of record the correct way, and we leverage it so it's always the same in Meridian. How do we make this happen? So primarily, we use our IntelliWizards modules to manage the lookup lists in our systems. And so this really makes it so that it's a standardized way of doing business in Meridian. So here you have a screenshot of the IntelliWizard, or an example of one, and this is all based on one university at the moment. It's configurable to you, so please just, in a perfect world, it would be whatever magical thing you wanted. But notice at the top where it says project source, and then there's a project underneath it. That is that location of project management system data. It's coming in from there. So how we make it happen in a way that on the wizard for the user, they don't know that there's magic happening in the background. So when you pick that project, it's picking all of that information you see at the top, and it's preloading all of the location data that's below it where it says site, building, and floors, because it's part of the project. And then we validate that, yes, that building is valid against your space source. So magic in the background. For example, project information. This is what it could look like coming in from that system. So here's one that we use for a customer that has a table primarily in Excel. And so they have an ID and all these things, and it comes into SQL. We have it linked up so that when they add something, it automatically comes in at that night. And then here's another example of what that can look like. And we can include less or more data, whatever is valuable, from the other system. So this is all coming from their other system of record for projects. So whoever entered that information there, it's their job to make sure it's correct, basically, and it just brings it into Meridian here. The great thing about project information is when the project manager changes in that other system, for example, a project manager retired because he won the lottery and handed off the project to someone else, and they change it in the source of record, it will also change it here in Meridian on your tables. So it will show the current project manager. Some examples of some location data is coming from a space system. So this is coming from their system of record for spaces. And so you would have usually it's this, you have a building number, which always stays the same. And then you have your description, and then floors that are tied to this. Whatever's coming from that system is what's going to populate this table in the background of Meridian. They're usually SQL databases that use some, I say magic because I'm not the heavy technical person here. So if you want to know more, I do have a link to that information that I can share later. But the key here is that your building numbers stay the same. And I'm speaking across campuses, or your zones are always the same if you're talking about a manufacturing plant, your areas, if you will. Those keys stay the same. But in a university scenario or any kind of higher ed or government facility kind of management system, sometimes those building names change. Oftentimes they change over time. So, such as a university might have a library, and somebody donated a boatload of money, and now the library is called Smith Family Library or something. In Meridian, the key stays the same, but your database here will reflect the new name. And so it's consistent across the board. onto assets and equipment from a CMMS system. Here's just some examples. Usually moving forward in my configurations now, I'm not as data heavy coming from those systems. So the key values that you probably want to bring in are the equipment number, maybe the description of it, and probably the type. You probably want to be able to filter out certain types of things when you're looking to add this data to your document. So I don't really see the value in some of these other pieces of information because they're in the asset management system. And most times, people that are looking for information on a piece of equipment are starting in the asset management system, and then they can run that hyperlink query to pull documents from Meridian based on that equipment number. Just some examples. I think there's a question that I might want to answer quickly. So I do have a question I want to answer before I go forward. Can the buildings and floor information be loaded dynamically from the space management system? They are, so how it works in our IntelliWizard configurations is they are dynamically loaded once a night into the system, usually by a push from the source system into our SQL database. And then we update ours, and then it sweeps through the vault and updates all documents that have those related spaces. So sometimes it takes a day for those to appear, such as a new building. Maybe you added a new floor, you pop the top on something and add it in the space system. It's an automatic process. So you don't have to, as the Meridian users or administrators, keep track of, oh, they built a new building, I need to go add all these things to my support table. Our system, our configuration system, will do that for you. So if that's what you mean by dynamically from the space system, yes. But the whole point of having these leveraging from other places is to have everything concurrent across the systems. So concurrent's not the right word. The same nomenclature across systems. So benefits to your organization. You have consistent terminology. Your building name is the same across the organization. The building number is the same. There's nobody can typo the building name if it's coming from another system and you're picking it from a pick list. Consistent terminology in how the equipment looks. Your equipment numbers, there's nobody manually typing anything. It's coming from the system. Maintaining the data, like I said, the system when we set it up, hopefully, is able to be maintained without anybody really knowing that it's being maintained. Makes sense? So that push from the other system, push out of, say, Famous 360 into the SQL table with all your assets and equipment or spaces or whatever you're using Famous for. You don't have to maintain that. It's a setup in our system that it does it for you. So the user doesn't know that it's magically appearing, they just know they can pick it. Easier searching. So having consistent metadata and having it be the same for everyone means that it's easier to find things by those terms. It's easier for the user to search by the terms they're familiar with, such as your operations and maintenance folks are looking for equipment. They're going to look for the equipment number, or they're going to look by building and floor because they know it's something in the library on the 3rd floor. They're going to use those consistent terms across the board. And if it makes their job easier, they can find it. Like I said, different departments and groups are familiar with their terms. So a lot of times, everyone knows buildings and floors. Like that's a consistent thing across the board. But you have your project managers, if you're using the system as an archive per se, is that your project managers aren't going to know those project information. They're not going to know those things. So they're going to go by building info. But if you're using this system as a live, living repository for active projects, they're going to know that project info, and that's what they're going to default to when they're searching for something or they want to enter a new document on something. So leveraging people's knowledge base and understanding what metadata they more likely need to search by is how we help configure your system. And then you can find things. So that's kind of the searching part. And this is a quick, short, and sweet sort of metadata refresher to talk about these things. But are there any other questions that come to mind about other things about metadata, like how you decide what to pull or anything like that? I'm open to all questions like that. We do talk about, there's a piece of metadata I didn't talk about, and it popped into my head just now, about your other lists. So if it's not coming from another system, how do you manage that? And how do you make that be your standard, such as disciplines or drawing types if you're stating drawings? And those are all lookup lists that we help configure for you so that people aren't just free typing architectural, because some people have a little bit of dyslexia sometimes and flip 2 letters and then suddenly you have another piece of metadata that it shouldn't be there, right? So we try to boost the efficiency in that way as well, of as many pick lists as we possibly can use for your metadata as in there too. So another question, we're setting up a new project management system, eBuilder. Is there anything we need to do in that setup of that software to help with our integration with Meridian? Good question. Yes, if you already have Meridian and you already have IntelliModules, this is you're already configured to leverage whatever existing sources you had. Let me go back in time for a moment and show that shot of this one. In the world of dynamic software implementations, this is kind of this question. You do need to keep in mind the fields you already have being used in Meridian. So for example, this one has these different sources shown here, which is easy to see. So they have these different sources of information. And that's kind of where you're talking about, is that you have an existing system and you're now going to move to eBuilder. So we would then leverage the similar data from eBuilder. So when you're setting up eBuilder and you already have Meridian, having that conversation with us kind of helps you get there. But keep in mind the data you're already pulling from another system, or you have already created maybe in this legacy type concept where you just you created the project number. It needs to be similar in nature. You need to make sure that your location data stays the same in the key. That's what some people miss when they make that transition between systems of, in this system, the locations have an extra 0. And that's kind of an issue. It makes it hard to validate. We can do it, but it makes it hard to validate that. So keep in mind when you're moving to this, the properties you already use and what those properties look like. Because if there's a different format for, say, even this status concept, we need to know that, because that really will make more properties available for searching and can sometimes make it a challenge. The primary pieces are the location data, because your new system will have a project number, it'll probably have a date, it'll have a description. I'm jumping between the two. It'll have probably location data and a project manager. The format of those is kind of important to a certain extent. So we need to have a conversation about that one, Ms. Sims. just to make sure we cover it all. But a starting point is property for property. And notice there are ways we can fill in an NA if you don't have that going forward in eBuilder. Hopefully that answered your question in a very roundabout way. But these are all, these two lists are all coming from a project management system. And as I mentioned, in our IntelliWizard configurations, you can have multiple sources of this data because not everyone sticks with the same system forever, but you can stick with Meridian for the longevity of your archive. And it just will show you over time the different things, but you can always search for the history of a building based on the building number. And that's the key here of leveraging systems and keeping consistency in your metadata. Okay. Excuse me. Are there any other questions as I go back through some of these slides? Not seeing any more questions. I do want to reiterate that this information is based on our IntelliModules, which are an add-on to your configurable Meridian, because I know there's some people on this webinar that might not be familiar with IntelliWizards, but it's a Hagerman offering that allows for a lot of this dynamic approach to leveraging metadata and leveraging multiple entries for a given property, such as a building or floors, the equipment. Like I said, we have the ability in our system on this side of higher edit world to tag multiple pieces of information in one property pick. So you can use your leveraging, you can leverage data that way as well.